The Nigerian port sector plays a critical role as the gateway of the Nigerian economy to the world and remains a focus of different interests. However, corruption in the sector has hampered it from delivering on its potential and caused the country to lose business to neighboring countries, leading to loss of revenue. To change this narrative, ICPC had, in collaboration with port agencies, the Technical Unit on Governance and Anti-Corruption Reforms and Bureau of Public Procurement, carried out a corruption risk assessment in 6 Nigerian seaports in 2013. The exercise identified key corruption-related risks in the Nigerian port sector and preferred solutions to address the challenges in the form of an integrity plan. The integrity plan included recommendations to harmonize the standard operating procedures of the port agencies, establish a port service support portal to serve as a transparent system for internal and external complaint handling for both operational and integrity issues, and develop anti-corruption policies. Today on the program, we shall highlight how critical stakeholders in the ports sector have committed to supporting the implementation of an anti-corruption policy to curb corruption and improve the ease of doing business in the sector during a one-day interactive session for CEOs of port agencies held at the Commission's headquarters in Abuja recently. Welcome to Corruption Must Go, ICPC's weekly television program. I am your host, Murna Barnabas Atiai. Stay with us as Ruth brings us anti-corruption tidbits.
Welcome to this segment on anti-corruption stories. I am Ruth Awudi. ICPC has admonished traditional rulers, religious leaders, and civil society organizations in the country to help effect behavioral change amongst their subjects as part of their contribution to the fight against corruption. The chairman of ICPC, Professor Bolaji Owasonye, SAN OFR, gave this charge in his keynote address at a one-day sensitization dialogue with traditional rulers, religious leaders, and civil society organizations in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. Professor Owasonye, who described traditional and religious leaders and community-based civil society groups as character molders, noted that without combining behavioral change advocacy, much may not be achieved in the fight against corruption, hence the need for the input of these stakeholders in the society.
And so it is very clear to us at ICPC that without combining behavior change advocacy, which is what the religious leaders and the faith, the two major dominant faith, even African traditional religion, does not say you should go about despoiling the state. This is what these major faiths preach and advocate, both Christianity and Islam. This is what traditional rulers advocate. That if we begin to have this conversation, not just once, so for those of you who are here, it is very likely, not very likely, it is definite that we will invite you again and again to look at different angles and different sides of this challenge. Because, as you know, it has become a problem for Nigeria.
He also charged them to be mindful of checking the constituency projects cited in their communities, saying they had the right to ask questions or call the attention of ICPC when they are not satisfied with the state of the projects. In her paper titled Advancing the Core Values of the National Ethics and Integrity Policy for Behavioral Change, the role of traditional rulers and religious leaders, the spokesperson of ICPC, Azuka Ogugwa, explained the 7 core values of the policy and how traditional and religious leaders could get involved.
Creation of awareness in our communities is very, very key. That we want to have a behavioral change. And it starts not just by speaking about it, but by living it. Because if in the community they see you talking about the values and everything, but you are not living according to these values, they will look at you as he's speaking from both sides of the mouth. So we have to rely on our royal fathers to help us to pass this message down, not just by the way they speak to their subjects, but by the way they live, by not giving titles to. The other day, a case was in the news about a royal father that gave a kidnapper a chieftaincy title. I think we all heard about that. So how does that look? Does it mean he's supporting it? So it's time for the royal fathers to actually ask questions.
On his part, the ICPC Deputy Director in the Constituency and Executive Tracking Division, Mr. Jimo Sulaiman, identified how religious and traditional rulers can play a huge role in ensuring value for money in the constituency projects budgeted for their communities.
The Commission believes that as grassroots persons, as religious people, you have a role to play. You are an influencer, you can influence your representative. If your representative wants to do something in your community, why will you not involve you if it's truly representative? That is why you are all here. To talk to them, to involve them, to let them know that they cannot just be bringing in projects without your input. Engage your representative in determining what projects you want. We have also seen legislators that say they want to do something in their community, but they ended up doing it on their own farm. You want to do a mini water project for the community, but you put it on your farm. Is that consensus project meant for the community any longer? It is not.
The program had in attendance the primate of the Anglican Communion in Nigeria, His Grace Dr. Henry Undukuba, as well as representatives of the Nigerian Supreme Council of Islamic Affairs, NCCIA, Christian Association of Nigeria, CAN, traditional rulers, civil society organizations, and youth groups. In a bid to improve the integrity of the judiciary and ensure expeditious dispensation of corruption trials, ICPC, in collaboration with the National Judicial Institute, NJI, held a 2-day capacity building workshop for judges. Speaking at the event, which held at the NJI in Abuja, the ICPC chairman, Professor Bolaji Owasonye, SAN OFR, said the event was organized to examine relevant legislations government have put together and discuss how best to utilize them in eradicating corruption. Professor Owasonye, who was represented by ICPC board member Honorable Justice Adamu Bello, retired, explained that the existing legislations, although beautifully crafted, require the interpretation of judges for their effective usage.
It is not news even to the deaf that our system is bleeding to death as a result of corruption and requires urgent clinical attention to keep it from breathing its last. The government has done well in enacting several legislations aimed at curbing the menace of corruption. But again, as the American philosopher Oliver Wendell Holmes posited, the prophecies of what the courts can do and nothing more pretentious in the law, hence the need for this workshop. Beautiful and perfectly crafted legislations cannot speak of themselves to ensure obedience. They require the buy-in of the judiciary by way of interpretations that will meet the justice of each case to be effective. Therefore, our gathering is designed to sharpen each other in understanding, interpretation, and application of various statutes enacted to fight and eradicate the scourge of corruption.
In his remarks at the event, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Honorable Justice Olukayode Ariwoola, noted that the capacity building workshop was meant to keep judges abreast of all relevant legislations in handling corruption cases in their different courts. Justice Ariwoola, who spoke through the administrator, NJI, Honorable Justice Salisu Garba Abdullahi, stressed the need for judicial integrity as well as upholding the code of ethics of the judiciary, stating that it was very critical to the fight against corruption in Nigeria.
Judicial integrity is paramount, especially in relation to the adjudication of corrupt cases, and this is crucial to you as judicial officer. Officers consider the fact that you have the final say in the matters before your courts. Furthermore, it will not be out of place to emphasize that there is a correlation between efficient judiciary, stable economy, and foreign direct investment. This is because timely, transparent, and efficient adjudication of cases and enforcement of law will tend to curb corruption, investment, and enhance investor confidence, thereby encouraging higher level of economic development.
Topics such as non-conviction-based recovery regime under the Proceeds of Crime Act 2022, expeditious trial of cases, and the challenges of day-to-day trial under the Administration of Criminal Justice Act 2015, constitutional rights to own property, Section 45, subsection 1 of the ICPC Act 2000 in perspective, and international best practices, amongst others, were extensively discussed. The workshop was well attended by justices of the Court of Appeal as well as justices from federal and state high courts. That will be all on this segment. Corruption Must Go continues with Mona. Stay with us.
Fellow Nigerians, do you know that constituency projects are actually your projects? Do you know that constituency projects are funded by the federal government? Do you know that you can track release of constituency project funds for projects located in your constituency and follow up to know how they have been executed? Constituency projects happen because government does not want to leave any community out in development efforts. You have a responsibility to know what constituency project has been planned for your community, how much has been allocated for it, and whether value for money has been delivered. Take ownership of constituency projects located in your community. Protect them because they belong to you. Government knows about your needs and is planning for you. Government needs your help to ensure quality delivery. Know that constituency projects are actually your projects. Protect your constituency project. My constituency, my project.
For information on funds allocated to projects in your constituency, call 0800 2255 4272.
This message is from the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission and the National Orientation Agency.
If you're just tuning in, this is Corruption Must Go, and our focus is on the implementation of an anti-corruption policy in the ports sector. Speaking at the interactive session, which was aimed at improving service delivery in the sector, ICPC Chairman Professor Bolaji Owasonye, SAN, underscored the importance of the maritime sector, describing it as a critical part of the economy. The chairman, however, lamented that owing to corruption, the sector was not delivering on its potential optimally, thereby causing the Nigerian nation to lose a lot of revenue as well as business to neighboring countries. He also pointed out that the policy for the sector was a very important mechanism for improving their operations, as well as the compliance function of all agencies operating within the sector.
The newly developed anti-corruption policy in the sector for the agencies operating at the ports is a very important mechanism for improved port activities and towards improving the compliance function of all the agencies operating within that sector. That policy, which was developed through the support received from the CBI and the MACN amongst others, focuses on ethical codes within the sector, which prescribes punishment for unethical behavior, as well as serving the consequences management for infractions within that port sector. The policy, like the standard operating procedure and the port process manual, needs to be further strengthened. Now, once we've tried them for some time, we can see what are the weak links there, and the next thing, of course, is to propose reforms and improvements in those documents. Let me conclude my remarks that the role of the ICPC, as I've said, is to focus on the corruption risks and to take all measures that we can to mitigate them.
You're still watching Corruption Must Go. The focus is still on the implementation of anti-corruption policy in the port sector. The support of critical stakeholders in the port sector to the implementation of the anti-corruption policy can never be overemphasized, as this will not only infuse ethical practices in the conduct of port operation, but will also change the negative perception about the country. In his remarks during the session, the Executive Secretary of Nigerian Shippers Council, Mr. Emmanuel Jime, stated that the goal of the meeting was to foster mutual understanding, trust, and to enable the building of potent alliances.
I'm most delighted to be here and honored to be addressing you this morning. The address is motivated by the ongoing port reforms. The focus will be on the progress and challenges of the Port Standard STEAM PSTT, in the implementation of the Nigeria Port Process Manual, NPPM. It is an effort to stress the importance of compliance, request for the buy-in, and or seek full cooperation of all the port operating agencies as gathered here today. Let me cast our minds back to the proclamation of the Executive Order 001-2017, otherwise called EO1, of the federal government on ease of doing business. As we are all aware, the proclamation seeks to promote efficiency and transparency in the country's business environment. Thus, the process manual came to represent the port sector's adaptive response to the actualization of the federal government objectives as envisaged in the ease of doing business policy. In other words, the manual was developed to serve as the main instrument of realizing the objective of the EO1 in the port sector.
The implementation of the policy will not only bring about ease of doing business, but will also encourage the highest levels of professionalism in the Nigerian maritime sector. Head, Technical Unit on Governance and Anti-Corruption Reforms, Mrs. Jane Onwumere, speaks further about the highlights of the Nigerian Ports Reform Projects.
The PSA, under the leadership of the Federal Ministry of Transport, has successfully built the capacity and supported port agencies to improve coordination between stakeholders and streamline processes of port operations by producing the Harmonized Standard Operating Procedure, the SOP, and developing the Port Service Support Portal. Both the Standard Operating Procedure and the PSSP, as we call it, are domiciled at the Nigerian Shippers Council. The PSSP is an online reporting platform through which stakeholders can register complaints and grievances and access redress. All port agencies who are members of the PSC are profiled on the PSSP
and simultaneously receive complaints real time, while the BPP, ICPC, and TUGA are profiled on the platform for oversight and enforcement where necessary. The Project Steering Committee has also developed the Nigeria Court Process Manual, which is a step-by-step sequenced directory of the processes at the court. It aims to reduce bureaucratic bottlenecks and improve operational efficiency in the sector by stating who does what, how, and timelines for all activities in the sequence.
On his part, the head of Convention on Business Integrity, Soji Apampa, suggested that a compliance monitor be put in place in order to ensure that officers and users of the ports abide by the policy. Let's hear from him.
It is very, very hard to monitor all the activities of rank and file. It is hard to monitor. So usually what happens is that there are contracts in place that are based on incentives, and the incentives are both positive and negative. So if you know that you take certain behaviors, you will be promoted, then you might consider in your own self-interest exhibiting those behaviors. But where there are no consequences for your behavior, whether positive or negative, then we leave our officers completely to their self-interest. So the risk of corruption increases if we don't have that. Coupled with that, even if we do have that, we need to be able to monitor compliance. Because it's as a result of monitoring compliance that we can tell who is compliant and who is not, in order to give either the positive incentive or the negative incentive as well. So compliance monitoring, therefore, is a cornerstone of any anti-corruption policy.
Again and again, the implementation of the policy will not only help enhance transparency and accountability, but will promote effectiveness and efficiency in the port process. Hence, the Director General, Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA, Bashir Yusuf Jamo, congratulated ICPC and other important players for their efforts to rid the ports of corruption.
Now, I would like to congratulate each and every player on the role and the position applied so far to fight this corruption. I had a number of discussions on this issue of corruption. In particular, the immediate past CEO of ICPC, I had a discussion with him. He gave me, as the chairman mentioned, he gave me the full blueprint of their report in terms of anti-corruption and what is going to be made when they were inaugurated as a committee. Today, we are seeing the result of this work and the effort of so many of us here. About 70% of the successes in terms of corruption, is now within the international community's purview, and a number of commendations has been given. As last speaker mentioned, a lot of countries are now trying to emulate our own process and procedures. But that's where we are today. But we still have a long way to go.
The implementation of this port reform policy will no doubt increase the competitiveness of the maritime sector and make it the preferred ports within the West African sub-region and Africa in general. That's our package on today's edition. Don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms showing on your screen, and to report corruption through our toll-free numbers also showing on your screen. See you again next time. Bye for now.